The impossible encounter. The Zerithian capital buzzed with energy. Towering silver buildings gleamed under the twin suns, and alien ships zipped through the skies like fireflies in the night. Daniel Carter, a human diplomat, stood in awe of the scene before him. He had visited many alien worlds during his career, but nothing compared to the grandeur of Zerithia. Yet, beneath the beauty, tensions ran high. Daniel was here to negotiate peace. Relations between humans and the Zerithians had been strained for decades, but recent attacks on trade ships had brought them to the brink of war. He adjusted his suit nervously as he entered the grand hall where the talks were to take place. The Zerithians were tall, with shimmering skin that reflected light like diamonds. Their eyes glowed faintly, giving them an otherworldly presence. The High Council members greeted Daniel with a mixture of curiosity and caution. As the talks began, Daniel spoke passionately about unity and the need for understanding between their species. He could see some of the council members nodding, but others remained cold and distant. Suddenly, the room shook violently. A deafening explosion tore through the hall, sending debris flying everywhere. "Get down," someone shouted. Daniel hit the ground, shielding himself as flames and smoke filled the air. The once majestic hall was now a scene of chaos. Zerithian guards rushed to secure the area, but the attackers had struck with precision. Panic spread like wildfire. Amid the chaos, Daniel's attention was drawn to a figure struggling to free themselves from a collapsed pillar. It was a Zerithian woman, her silver skin dulled by ash and her gown torn. She was trapped, and the flames were closing in. Without thinking, Daniel sprinted toward her. "Hold on," he shouted. The woman looked up, her glowing eyes wide with fear. Daniel pushed away debris and pulled her free just as the flames licked the edge of her gown. She stumbled, and he caught her in his arms. "Can you walk?" he asked urgently. She nodded, her voice barely audible. "Thank you." Together, they stumbled toward the nearest exit. The heat was intense, and the smoke made it hard to breathe, but Daniel refused to give up. When they finally emerged into the open air, he saw the Zerithian guards rushing toward them. "She's safe," Daniel called out, coughing. The guards stopped abruptly, their eyes fixed on the woman. They bowed deeply, surprising Daniel. Before he could ask why, the woman straightened herself and turned to him. You saved my life," she said softly. Her voice carried a strange melodic quality, almost like a song. Daniel shrugged, brushing soot off his suit. It was the right thing to do. Her gaze lingered on him for a moment, as if she were searching for something. Then, without another word, she turned and disappeared into the crowd of guards. Daniel stood there, confused. Who was she? Why had the guards bowed to her? He didn't have time to think as medics approached him, ushering him to a safe zone. Later that evening, as Daniel sat alone in his quarters, the memory of the woman haunted him. There was something about her that felt significant. His communicator beeped, breaking his thoughts. "Mr. Carter," a voice said, "the High Council has summoned you." Immediately, Daniel frowned. The peace talks had been disrupted, and he doubted they would resume so soon. What could the council want now? As he made his way to the council chamber, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just taken a very unexpected turn. The secret revealed. Daniel Carter stood at the grand entrance of the Zerithian High Council chamber, feeling the weight of 100 alien eyes on him. The council chamber was an architectural marvel, with walls made of crystalline panels that shimmered with colors as the light shifted. A low hum filled the air, emanating from the Zerithian councilors seated in a semicircle. Their glowing eyes pierced through the silence as Daniel stepped forward. "Human diplomat Daniel Carter," the High Speaker announced, his deep voice resonating through the chamber. "You are summoned not as a negotiator, but as a hero." A murmur spread through the audience, composed of Zerithian elites and curious onlookers. Daniel blinked in surprise. Hero. He hadn't expected this. Before he could respond, the large crystalline doors behind the council opened, and the room fell into an eerie silence. She walked in. The woman he had saved during the attack appeared, her silver skin now glowing brilliantly under the chamber lights. Gone was the soot-covered survivor he had pulled from the flames. She wore an elegant gown that sparkled like the night sky, and her presence commanded reverence. Daniel's jaw tightened as whispers filled the room. The guards bowed again, just as they had during the rescue. This time, it clicked. She wasn't just anyone. The High Speaker stood, his voice filled with awe. Honored members of the council, this is Princess Velaria, heir to the Zerithian throne. Daniel froze. Princess. His mind reeled. He had saved an alien princess during the attack, and now he was standing in the middle of a political firestorm. Velary's gaze locked onto Daniel's. Her eyes, glowing with an intensity that made him uncomfortable, softened slightly as she addressed the council. This human saved my life. In our darkest hour, when chaos surrounded us, he risked everything for me. The chamber erupted into cheers and applause, but Daniel could sense unease behind some of the councilors' smiles. Not everyone seemed pleased by this revelation. Velaria raised her hand, and the room fell silent once more. She turned to face Daniel. Daniel Carter, I owe you a debt that cannot be repaid with words or gold. Daniel shifted uncomfortably under the weight of her words. Your Highness, he said carefully, I was just doing what anyone would have done. No, she said firmly, stepping closer. You did what no one else dared to do. You risked your life for mine without hesitation. Among my people, such an act binds us forever. The room grew tense. Daniel felt the weight of the princess's words settle like a heavy stone in his chest. What do you mean by binds us? He asked, his voice cautious. Velaria smiled faintly, but there was a seriousness in her expression. A life saved is a life shared. By our ancient laws, I am bound to you, Daniel Carter. Our fates are intertwined. Daniel's stomach dropped. I don't understand. Before Velaria could explain, a loud voice interrupted. This is unacceptable. A tall Zerithian counselor rose from his seat, his eyes burning with anger. He is an outsider, a human. The idea that our princess would owe him such a bond is an insult to our traditions. The room erupted into chaos. Some shouted in agreement, while others argued against him. Daniel stood frozen, caught in the middle of a political storm he hadn't asked to be part of. Velaria raised her voice, silencing the chamber with a single command. Enough. Her tone was sharp, regal, and unyielding. She turned back to Daniel, her eyes softer now. I will explain everything, but not here. Meet me at the Celestial Garden at moonrise. Before Daniel could respond, Velaria swept out of the chamber, leaving him surrounded by murmurs and suspicious stares. He wasn't sure what he had gotten himself into, but one thing was clear. His simple mission to negotiate peace had turned into something far more complicated, and perhaps far more dangerous. The proposal. The Celestial Garden was unlike anything Daniel had ever seen. Massive crystalline trees stretched toward the sky, their branches glowing softly with a rainbow of colors. Tiny, luminous creatures flitted between the leaves, casting shimmering reflections on the ground. A soft hum filled the air, a sound that seemed to resonate in his chest. It was peaceful, almost magical, but Daniel's heart was anything but calm. He stood waiting, the silence stretching uncomfortably, until he heard the gentle crunch of footsteps behind him. Turning, he saw her, Princess Velaria. This time, she wasn't wearing the grand gown or glowing jewels of royalty. Instead, she was dressed simply, in a flowing silver cloak that shimmered faintly in the moonlight. She looked almost human. You came, she said, her voice calm yet tinged with something he couldn't quite place. Relief, gratitude, hesitation. Daniel nodded. I figured I should hear what this bond business is all about. You've got the entire council buzzing, and some of them don't seem too happy with me. Velaria gave a faint smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. That is an understatement. My people can be resistant to change, especially when it involves an outsider. Daniel folded his arms. I didn't ask for any of this, Your Highness. I saved you because it was the right thing to do, not because I wanted to get tangled up in politics. Liara stepped closer, her glowing eyes fixed on his. I know. That's what makes you different. It's why I chose you. Daniel blinked. Chose me? For what? Liara took a deep breath, as if bracing herself for something monumental. You saved my life, Daniel Carter. Among my people, that creates a bond, a sacred, unbreakable connection. But it is more than tradition. It is destiny. Daniel stared at her, trying to process her words. Destiny. Look, I'm just a diplomat. I came here to negotiate peace, not get caught up in whatever this is. Liara's gaze didn't waver. You don't understand. My people are dying, Daniel. Slowly, but surely. Our genetic code is deteriorating. Fewer and fewer Zerithians are being born, and those who are often don't survive long. Daniel's brows furrowed. I'm sorry to hear that, but what does that have to do with me? Liara hesitated for a moment before stepping even closer, her voice dropping to a near whisper. Your DNA is compatible with ours. Humans are the only species we've ever encountered with genetic markers that can strengthen our own. Without outside help, my people face extinction. And you, Daniel, you are the key to our survival. Daniel felt the ground shift beneath him. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Wait, are you saying you want me to? Liara nodded, her expression resolute. I want you to become my bonded partner. Together, we can create a future for my people. A child born of our union would symbolize hope, a bridge between our species. Daniel took a step back, his mind spinning. You can't be serious. You don't even know me. I'm just a guy who happened to be in the right place at the right time. You're more than that, Liara said softly. You're brave, selfless, and whether you realize it or not, you've already become a symbol of hope for my people. The council may not all agree, but they will follow me if I choose this path. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, struggling to find the right words. This is insane. I didn't sign up for this. I don't even know if it's possible. Liara's expression softened, but her determination didn't waver. I know it's a lot to ask, but I wouldn't ask if it weren't necessary. You have time to think about it. Just know that your decision could change the fate of an entire species. Daniel looked away, his gaze falling on the glowing trees around them. The beauty of the celestial garden felt almost oppressive now, a reminder of the enormity of what was being asked of him. I need time, he said finally, his voice low. Liara nodded. Of course, but not too much time. The council will act if they think you are a threat, and I can only protect you for so long. Her words sent a chill down his spine. He had come to Zerethia, seeking peace, and now he found himself at the center of a decision that could shape the future of two worlds. As Liara turned to leave, her final words lingered in the air like a haunting melody. You saved my life, Daniel. Now you have the chance to save my people. The hidden danger. The whispers of unrest reached Daniel before Liara could. Standing on the balcony of the guest quarters provided by the Zerethian High Council, he stared out at the glittering city. The twin moons cast a silver glow over the crystalline spires, but the beauty of the scene was lost on him. In the distance, he could hear the faint rumble of protests, alien voices shouting words he couldn't understand but didn't need to. He wasn't welcome here. That much was clear. The door behind him slid open, and Liara stepped inside, her expression grave. She wore a combat suit this time, sleek and fitted, a sharp contrast to her royal gowns. Daniel turned, startled by her appearance. You look ready for a fight, he said, trying to lighten the tension. It didn't work. I may have to be, she replied. The council is divided, and the dissenters grow bolder by the hour. The attack during the peace talks wasn't random, Daniel. It was a warning. Daniel frowned. A warning to who? You? Liara shook her head. To us, to the idea of unity between our people. There is a faction, powerful, well-funded, that believes humans are inferior, that we are better off dying than seeking salvation through you. Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. And they're willing to kill to prove their point. Yes, Liara said bluntly. And they've already begun moving against you. I intercepted a message this morning. There's a bounty on your head, Daniel. Daniel let out a bitter laugh. Great, I save your life. And now I've got a price on mine. Perfect. Liara stepped closer, her voice soft but firm. This isn't a joke, Daniel. They will come for you, and they won't stop until you're dead. That's why I've ordered increased security. Daniel's temper flared. Security? You think guards are going to fix this? You've put me in the middle of your war, Liara. I didn't ask for this. She didn't flinch at his anger. Instead, she met his gaze with a calm intensity. You didn't ask for it, but you're here now. And whether you like it or not, you're part of something bigger than yourself. They fear you because you represent change. Hope. That makes you dangerous to them. Daniel turned away, running a hand through his hair. Hope. All I'd done is put a target on my back. Liara stepped beside him, her voice dropping to a near whisper. You've done more than you realize. The people are watching. Many of them already see you as a symbol of something new, something better. That's why the dissenters are so desperate to stop you. Daniel stared at her, searching for any hint of doubt. There was none. She truly believed every word she was saying. But belief wasn't enough to stop assassins. Before he could respond, the room suddenly plunged into darkness. The hum of the city outside faltered, replaced by an eerie silence. Daniel's instincts kicked in immediately. What's going on? He asked, his voice tense. Liara's glowing eyes narrowed, scanning the room. A power disruption. This isn't a coincidence. The door to the balcony shattered as a blast of energy tore through it. Daniel dove for cover, pulling Liara down with him as shards of crystal rained around them. Shadows moved in the smoke, and the unmistakable hum of Zerithian weapons filled the air. They're here, Liara said, her voice steady despite the chaos. She reached into her suit, pulling out a sleek, glowing weapon and tossing another to Daniel. Do you know how to use this? Daniel stared at the alien weapon in his hand. Not really. Point and shoot, she said, already firing at the intruders. The room erupted into chaos. Energy bolts streaked through the air, illuminating the attackers, Zerithians clad in dark armor, their faces obscured by masks. Daniel ducked behind a column, returning fire as best he could. The weapon kicked in his hands, and he realized with grim satisfaction that he'd hit one of the attackers. Not bad for a beginner, Liara called out, her voice laced with dry humor. This isn't exactly how I plan to spend my evening, Daniel shouted back. The fight was brutal and fast. Liara moved with precision, her combat training evident in every motion. Daniel struggled to keep up, his adrenaline the only thing keeping him alive. Finally, the last attacker fell, and the room fell silent once more. Breathing heavily, Daniel leaned against a shattered column. Tell me that was the worst of it. Liara looked at him, her face grim. It won't be. This was just the beginning. Daniel stared at her, the weight of her words sinking in. He wasn't just caught in the middle of a political struggle. He was now a target in a war. And for the first time, he realized that if he didn't fight back, he might not make it out alive. The alliance under threat. The air felt heavy in the aftermath of the attack, thick with the weight of the unknown. Daniel stood in the heart of the Zerithian capital, staring at the smoldering ruins where the attack had taken place. The once pristine, shimmering glass of the balcony was now littered with jagged shards, a stark reminder of the violence that had almost cost him his life. Beside him, Liara's face was set in a hard, determined expression. The calm she exuded was a contrast to the chaos they had just survived. Yet in her eyes, Daniel could see the depth of her concern, The council's approval was no longer her only worry. Now the very future of her people hung in the balance, and every decision she made felt heavier than ever. "They'll come again," Daniel said, his voice low and grim. He didn't need to say more. They both knew it. Liara nodded. "Yes. They'll keep coming. Every time we take a step forward, they'll try to drag us 2 steps back." Daniel clenched his fists, his heart pounding in his chest. The sense of helplessness was growing stronger with each passing moment. He hadn't signed up for this. He didn't ask for this. Yet here he was, stuck in the middle of a war he never wanted to fight, between a species on the brink of extinction and a political faction desperate to preserve their ancient ways. "I don't know if I can do this, Liara," he said, more to himself than to her. "I don't know if I can keep you safe." Her eyes softened for a moment, but her voice remained firm. "You're already doing it. You don't need to be a soldier to make a difference. You're standing by me. That's more than enough." Before Daniel could respond, a commotion erupted from behind them. They turned to see a group of Zerithian guards approaching, their expressions tense. At the forefront was Kivrin, a high-ranking officer who had been a staunch supporter of Liara's leadership. "There's something you need to see," Kivrin said urgently, his voice laced with unease. He led them to a large, ornate room deep within the council's inner chambers, a place where only the most trusted of Liara's allies were allowed. There, a holographic map of Zerithia flickered to life in the center of the room, showing the movements of the anti-human faction. "They're growing bolder," Kivrin explained, pointing to several key locations on the map. "They've begun coordinating attacks across multiple regions, and we've intercepted communications hinting at something more dangerous." Daniel leaned forward, studying the map carefully. The anti-human faction was striking everywhere, from the outskirts of the capital to remote outposts that were integral to Zerithia's resource production. But it was the last target on the map that caught his eye. "They're going after the gene archives," Daniel said, his voice suddenly cold. Liara's face darkened. The gene archives were the heart of Zerithia's efforts to save their species. It held the genetic data from centuries of research, the last hope of saving her people's fragile genetics. If the rebels attacked those archives, it could set her people back decades, maybe even centuries. Kivrin nodded gravely. "Exactly. If they destroy the archives, they'll erase our last chance. They know this, which is why they're making it their top priority." The room fell into an unsettling silence. Daniel's mind raced, the weight of the situation settling in like a heavy fog. "What are we going to do about it?" Liara's eyes flashed with a fierce determination. "We have to strike first. We cannot let them get to the archives. If they do, everything we've worked for will be lost." Daniel looked at her, searching her face for any hint of doubt. There was none. She was resolute, but he couldn't help but feel the gravity of her words. "I can't do this alone," Liara continued, her voice steady. "And neither can you." Daniel glanced at Kivrin. "What do we need?" "We'll need a team," Kivrin replied. "A small stealth unit that can infiltrate the rebel strongholds and secure the archives before they can destroy it." Daniel's stomach twisted. He had never thought of himself as a soldier, but in that moment, he realized that his choice had already been made for him. He was in this to the end, whether he liked it or not. "Let's do it," Daniel said, his voice steady. "We can't afford to wait any longer." Liara's gaze softened slightly. "I knew I could count on you." The days that followed were filled with tension, preparation, and the growing realization that time was running out. Liara and Daniel met in secret, planning the mission that would either save or destroy everything. Their bond, once a symbol of hope, now became their strongest weapon. But as the hours ticked by, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. He didn't know how he knew, but the signs were there. The rebels had to know they were coming. Every move they made was being watched, every plan seemingly intercepted before it even had a chance to take form. The question wasn't if they'd be attacked, it was when. As the final hours drew near, Daniel found himself standing once more on the balcony, staring into the starlit sky. The weight of the decision he had made hung heavy in his chest, but there was no turning back now. Lyra's voice broke through his thoughts, soft and reassuring. "We'll succeed, Daniel. Together." He turned to face her, offering a small, uncertain smile. Together. And for the first time since he had stepped onto Zerithian soil, he believed it. The final decision. The mission was set in motion. Lyra, Daniel, and Kivrin's team prepared for the most dangerous operation yet, an assault on the rebel stronghold guarding the gene archives. As night descended on Zerithia, a quiet tension filled the air. The city, once a beacon of peace and innovation, now felt like a fragile shell on the verge of collapse. Daniel stood at the edge of the private chamber, looking at the Zerithian sky. The twin moons cast a soft glow over the city, but the beauty of the view did nothing to calm the storm swirling inside him. His mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. The mission, Lyra, his duty to the humans back home, and most of all, the bond that was now more than just symbolic. It was his responsibility. He could still feel the weight of Lyra's words echoing in his mind. "Your DNA is the last hope for my people." She had said it so calmly, like it was nothing more than a fact. But to Daniel, it felt like a boulder had been dropped on his chest, crushing every ounce of doubt and hesitation he'd held onto. The weight of an entire species was on his shoulders now. And if they failed, it wouldn't just be the end for Lyra's people. It would be the end for him too. A soft knock on the door broke his thoughts. Lyra entered quietly, her face more serious than he had ever seen it. Gone was the regal composure, replaced by a look of quiet determination. "You're thinking too much," she said, her voice soft but knowing. Daniel turned to face her. "I can't help it. This is everything. And I don't know if I'm ready for it. I don't know if I can carry all this weight." Lyra stepped closer, her glowing eyes searching his face. "You've already carried it farther than anyone else could. You saved my life, Daniel. And that choice is why we're standing here now. I wouldn't be asking you to make this sacrifice if I didn't believe in you." Her words should have comforted him, but instead they felt like another burden he couldn't quite lift. He looked away, his gaze settling on the holographic map Kivrin had shown them earlier, highlighting the location of the rebel stronghold. "We don't have time for doubts," Lyra continued, her tone turning more urgent. "The archives won't be there much longer. The rebels are already preparing to destroy them. If we don't act now, it will all be for nothing." Daniel took a deep breath, trying to steady his racing heart. "So, this is it, the final choice. I either accept this bond and save your people, or I don't." "Yes," Lyra replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "But it's not just about saving us. It's about saving a future we can build together." Daniel's pulse quickened. He knew what she was asking. To fully accept the bond, to bind himself to her people, to her, and to the fate of a world he had only just begun to understand. For the first time since this all began, Daniel realized how much he had grown to care for her, not just as a leader, but as the person who had shown him what true courage looked like. And the more he thought about it, the more he realized that he couldn't walk away from this. Not anymore. "I'm in," he said finally, his voice steady. "But we do this together. No more hiding behind royal titles. We face this head-on, no matter what happens." Lyra's eyes softened, a flicker of relief crossing her features. "I knew you would say that." She reached out, taking his hand gently. The warmth of her touch was both grounding and electrifying. It wasn't just the connection of flesh to flesh, but the unspoken bond that had been growing between them ever since that first moment on the battlefield. They weren't just two species now. They were partners in every sense of the word. The door opened once again, and Kivrin entered, his expression grim but determined. "We're ready. The rebel base is in sight. It's time." Daniel looked at Lyra, then at Kivrin, a final moment of uncertainty passing through him. But as he met Lyra's gaze, All his fears melted away. The decision was made. "We move out," Daniel said, his voice unwavering. The operation to infiltrate the rebel base was nothing short of a whirlwind. The team moved quickly, cutting through Zerithian forests and under city streets, utilizing every ounce of stealth and strategy they had at their disposal. Daniel's heart raced as they approached the heavily guarded stronghold, the air crackling with the tension of what was to come. Inside the rebel base, the archives were protected by the fiercest warriors Zerethia had ever produced. But Daniel and Lyra's team were better. Together, they navigated the labyrinth of corridors, avoiding traps and ambushes as they made their way to the core of the base. At the heart of the stronghold, they found the archives, intact, but guarded by the rebel leader, a cold, calculating Zerithian named Draxar. His eyes gleamed with fury when he saw them. "You think you can stop us?" Draxar sneered, his voice dripping with venom. "You are nothing but a human pawn in a game you don't understand." Daniel stood tall, the weight of the decision in his chest grounding him. "I understand more than you think. This isn't just about power, Draxar. It's about survival. And the future of two worlds." Liara stepped forward, her voice cold and unwavering. "You'll never win, Draxar. Not when we fight for something greater than ourselves." The tension between them was palpable. Daniel could feel the eyes of both sides on him. This was it, the moment where everything would change. And with that, the final battle began. The new dawn. The clash inside the rebel stronghold was intense, the sound of battle echoing through the cold stone halls. Daniel, his heart pounding in his chest, moved with a newfound purpose. He wasn't just fighting for his life anymore. He was fighting for a future, for Lyra's people, and for a chance at something no one had believed possible. His breath came in sharp gasps as he pressed forward, his weapon clutched firmly in his hand. The sound of energy bolts whizzing past him became a dull hum in his ears. He no longer saw the Zerithian rebels as enemies, just obstacles standing in the way of hope. The team fought their way toward the heart of the stronghold, where Draxar and his rebels had holed up. But it wasn't the rebel leader that haunted Daniel's thoughts. It was the archives. That glowing, sacred space that held the very DNA that could save Lyra's people. The weight of it all pressed down on him. They had to win, no matter the cost. As they approached the final chamber, Daniel could feel the energy in the air shift. The tension was unbearable, the knowledge that failure would mean the extinction of an entire species, a species he had come to care for deeply. But there was no turning back now. Suddenly, a blast of energy shot past him, and he turned to find Lyra standing at his side. Her eyes were fierce, but there was a sadness in them that tugged at Daniel's heart. "They're here," she said, her voice calm but filled with determination. "Then let's finish this," Daniel said, the words slipping from his lips with the weight of finality. Together, they stormed into the chamber. The rebel forces were waiting for them. Draxar stood in the center, his cold, calculating eyes fixed on them both. "You can't stop this, Lyra," Draxar sneered, his voice a low growl. "The archives will be destroyed, and with it, your foolish dream of salvation." Lyra stepped forward, her posture unwavering. "You think you can erase hope? You think you can erase us? My people will not die quietly. We will rise. And you're a shadow of a broken past." Daniel watched as the words passed between them, but it wasn't the verbal battle that mattered now. It was the final moment of truth. The archives, full of the genetic data that could save the Zerithians, stood behind Draxar, just out of reach. All it would take was one decision, one final strike, to ensure that hope survived. "Step aside, Draxar," Daniel said, his voice filled with a cold finality he hadn't known he was capable of. "Your time is over." For a moment, Draxar hesitated. His gaze flickered between the two of them, and in that split second, Daniel saw it, a crack in the rebels' resolve. But before Draxar could react, the room exploded in a flurry of action. Lyra lunged forward, striking swiftly. The rebels, caught off guard by her ferocity, began to fall back. But it wasn't enough. Draxar had already activated the self-destruct mechanism in the archives. A countdown timer began to flash ominously on the console. "No!" Lyra cried, her voice filled with desperation. She charged for the control panel, but Draxar was quicker. He raised a hand to stop her, a smug smile on his face. "You can't save them all, Princess," he taunted. Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Not today." Without a second thought, he darted forward, dodging the attacks of the remaining rebels. He reached the control panel just as the countdown reached its final seconds. In a swift motion, he slammed his fist down on the override button, deactivating the self-destruct just in time. The room fell into stunned silence. Lyra stood frozen for a moment, then rushed to his side, her eyes wide with shock and gratitude. You saved us." Daniel caught his breath, his heart racing. "No, we saved us. Together." But their victory was not without a price. Draxar, seething with rage, lunged at Daniel in a final act of defiance. But before he could land the fatal blow, Lyra stepped forward, raising her weapon with deadly precision. The blast was quick, clean, and final. Draxar fell to the floor, his reign of terror over. The rebels scattered, their will to fight shattered. And in that moment, Daniel realized that peace, real peace, was possible, not because of his actions alone, but because of the unity that had formed between him and Lyra, between humans and Zerithians. Hours later, the city was quiet. The battle was over, and the archives remained safe. But it was in the aftermath that Daniel truly understood what he had become a part of. Lyra stood before him, her expression soft and relieved. "We did it, Daniel. We've won." For a long time, Daniel didn't speak. He had come to Zerethia expecting nothing more than a quiet peace mission. Now, he had helped save a people from the brink of extinction. And perhaps even more importantly, he had found something he hadn't been looking for, a place where he truly belonged. Lyra's hand found his, and in that simple, quiet gesture, Daniel understood. They weren't just partners in war, they were partners in life. And with that bond, a new dawn had begun for both of their worlds. As the twin moons rose higher in the sky, Daniel whispered, "Together, we'll rebuild. Together, we'll change everything." Lyra smiled, her eyes shining. "Together, Daniel. Always."